If you thought that COVID modelling, which predicts the spread of the virus, was inaccurate or flaky, think again. It's arguably dishonest. In a majestic piece of journalism, Fraser Nelson from The Spectator magazine had a Twitter exchange with one of the key modellers advising the government, Graham Medley, the chair of the SAGE Modelling Committee. This whole exchange has been written up into an article in the magazine, and it's well worth a read. In this exchange, Mr. Medley seemed to suggest that he has been given a very limited brief and was asked to churn out worst-case scenarios without being asked to comment on how plausible they are. He said we generally model what we are asked to model. He went on, there is a dialogue in which policy teams discuss with the modellers what they need. That's right, folks, what they need to inform their policy. Fraser Nelson asks whether this remit could mean leaving out just as plausible, quite important scenarios that would not require lockdown. His reply? Decision makers are generally only interested in situations where decisions have to be made. Hear that one again, it's damning. Decision makers are generally only interested in situations where decisions have to be made. There appears to have been no interest from government figures in Whitehall in having any optimistic data that would suggest measures are not required. They just don't want to hear it. If the news is good, they don't want to hear it. Proof, if you needed it, that modelling, like so much of what we've seen this pandemic, is highly politically influenced. There is an argument to be made that modelling has been a tool for behavioural scientists rather than epidemiologists. Time and time again, what former Justice of the Supreme Court, Lord Sumption, calls junk modelling has shaped our pandemic response and devastating policies like lockdown. On the strength of these revelations, modelling looks to have been a PR exercise, theatre, and perhaps most damningly, a political weapon with which to keep us afraid and to make us comply. We know that the virus's trajectory has all too often fallen below even the modellers' sunniest predictions. And of course, let's not forget Randy Prof Neil Ferguson, who predicted 500,000 deaths at the start of the pandemic, which kicked off this whole nightmare. We as a public have always, perhaps naively, interpreted the modelling as a prediction of what the virus may well do. That's what we thought the modelling was. But it seems that may not have been its function. If this exchange is to be believed, it was about providing the government with ammo with which to lock us all down and retain a vice-like grip on our daily lives. Modelling looks to have been an answer in search of a question, a means to an end. Now, for me, this has echoes of Alistair Campbell's so-called dodgy dossier, in which allegedly sexed-up evidence was produced to justify the Iraq war. Well, here we go again with politicians asking public servants to manipulate or frame the facts in a certain way so that they can achieve their political ends. And we're seeing more of this doomsday modelling in relation to Omicron, which all the experts are now saying is on a par with a bad cold, including Tim Spector from the highly respected Zoe COVID data app. This government reminds me of the boy that cried wolf. You know that story. This little boy cries wolf a couple of times as a joke. And the third time, when there is a wolf there, no one comes to his rescue. Well, who's going to believe anything that comes out of those hellish government press conferences now? I've done my own bit of modelling, and here it is. Are you ready? I predict that cases of politicians not being trusted will go through the roof, and the public will, I predict, by next spring, be done with this pandemic and any future restrictions. A YouGov poll, courtesy of The Times, already suggests a majority of people are against further measures. That, for me, is a watershed moment. We're now facing the threat of Christmas being cancelled, or punishment for Christmas with a New Year lockdown. The scientific case for these ruinous measures, which damage the economy, society, and feed the spiralling non-COVID death toll, is crumbling. And with clear evidence that the statistics are being gerrymandered or at the very least slanted in the government's favour, in my view, there is no moral or intellectual case for these measures either. We revealed to the news last night that the Brexit Secretary, Lord Frost, has left the government. This is the dynamic figure who got Brexit done. He's leaving the government, we're told, because of concerns over Boris's uncosted and scientifically debatable green agenda, an ongoing fudge in relation to the Northern Ireland Protocol, which divides our country down the Irish Sea, and the increasingly authoritarian measures seen by this government. It's a huge blow for the Prime Minister after a week to forget. The court of King Boris is crumbling, as is the case for any future lockdowns. So, folks, let's not cancel Christmas. Let's cancel the doomsday sage scientists and their dodgy graphs.